Hey guys, we're back for the serious Q&A for episode 2. The question I got the most was, do you hate the show, Preston? This is a funny question because no, not at all. The show is a fun romp and there are some fantastic performances and incredible visuals. Last episode I was actually blown away by the Euron scene. The actor that they have playing Euron, I think his name is Pillow Assback, is incredible. Actually, I think his name is really Pillow Assbeak, which isn't that much better. But the one thing that I really loved about the book is how it inspires deductive reasoning. For example, a close reader could actually figure out who Jon Arryn's murderer was in the first book. The clues about Sweet Robin's fostering, Lysa's motives for killing Jon Arryn, they're all there. In the book, because the narrative is so tight, we can actually extrapolate and have a blast predicting future events. The problem with the show is that there are so many plot holes and shifts in motivation that I don't feel anyone can deduce anything anymore. For example, last episode we hear about an incredibly unlikely event, the retaking of Deepwood Motte. In the book, that would be a clue. How did that happen? Are the Hill Tribes involved? Were the missing sellswords from Stannis' army there? Was the letter just a lie? Misinformation? But in all probability, it's nothing, and speculating on that would be a waste of time because we don't trust the writers to be that careful. The book is like a great riddle, but a solvable riddle. But the show is like Bilbo's riddle. What have I got in my pocket? It's empty and unfair because there's nothing to deduce. It's a crossword puzzle without the clues. Do you think that Bloodraven and Bran will take the side of the others in the coming war? I personally think that the Children of the Forest are little-fingering the others and the regular humans. They're purposely starting a war in order to get the humans and the others to kill each other off. Bloodraven tells Bran that a war is coming. Why is he so sure? Why isn't he trying to stop it? Is it because he's the cause? Keep in mind, we still don't know who planted that dragon glass at the Fist of the First Men. And those wights that almost killed the Lord Commander, they were found in a weirwood grove. I believe the Children of the Forest are hoping to inherit the Earth after humanity kills itself off. Isn't it possible that Leaf was lying about Bran leaving? Good question, and absolutely. If the Children of the Forest are hostile to humanity, it would make sense for them to lie to Bran and Mira. In an interview, our author did say that the plot would be going even further north. I kind of assumed that Bran would head further north, but in the body of summer. I think it's very possible that Bran may end up dying or leaving his body behind and living a second life inside his wolf. Bran's vision of Lyanna riding a horse in is when every R+L=J fanboy creamed their pants. If you had the power, would you want the show to do R+L=D? Well, I have to say you could show some fanboys linoleum and they would see R+L=J. But if I had the power, I would actually do neither. I believe R+L=D mostly because Ned is so obsessed with Daenerys in A Game of Thrones. I actually think all of the lineage talk is stupid. A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones is a pretty heavy-handed criticism of feudalism, monarchy, and nepotism. Our characters have spent 14,000 years focused on lineage, and it's been horrible. Why have lineage be important to the story when the whole story is about how lineage at best is unimportant and at worst is harmful? Unless our author is setting up Jon and Dany to be perfect snowflakes that then fail. He may be setting up a situation where a bunch of warmongering religious zealots rally around both Jon and Dany and then kill each other off. Do you think Longclaw is Lightbringer? Well, I don't think any prophecy is true. Keep in mind, George R. R. Martin is an atheist who has some very serious criticism of religion in his works. And as you can see, Westeros has some pretty horrid religions that only become worse once they're combined with the military or politics. I'm not sure why our author would suddenly have these religious extremists be correct about their gloom and doom warmongering prophecies. Keep in mind, nearly everything George R. R. Martin has ever written is anti-war. Would an anti-war atheist man really have his magnum opus be a story about how war is okay as long as it's for religion? So how did Robert Strong find out some drunk was talking smack about Cersei? I have no clue what Robert Strong is doing. Is he just walking around town looking for people to smash? Well, I suppose there could be a few possible explanations. It could be that Strong is really loyal to Cersei, was doing patrols, overheard the talking smack, and decided to defend Cersei's honor. Or it could be that Robert Strong has a puppet master like Qyburn or Qyburn's master who observed the drunk and ordered Strong to defend Cersei's honor. However, neither of these possibilities really sit well. I doubt Qyburn is truly loyal to Cersei, and therefore I doubt Strong would be either. Even if Qyburn and Strong were loyal, why focus on this drunk when there are much bigger fish to fry? I suppose it could be that Cersei ordered Strong to go out and defend her honor in the city, and Strong happened to hear this drunk and killed him, but I feel like even Cersei would find the chatter of small folk irrelevant. Why not have Strong do something useful like pick off the sparrows one by one instead? In the end, I think the scriptwriter just wanted to have a little more sex and comedy in the episode and wanted to show off the powers of Robert Strong. So Jaime confesses to releasing his brother, but it didn't provoke any question from the High Septon. Is this public knowledge? No, I don't think it was, and it really shows that the High Sparrow is a hypocrite and has an agenda. But we did kind of know this before. For instance, Cersei is accused of regicide, but Lancel was complicit. So why isn't Lancel on trial? Jaime admits to a slew of crimes and the High Sparrow does nothing. The High Sparrow is clearly not interested in justice for justice's sake. Did you get a sense of Cersei's ruthlessness coming out a little in her scene with Tommen? I did, and I think this speaks to the acting ability of Lena Headey. Something is severely creepy about Cersei right now. She has gone off the deep end, and I do fear for Tommen's life at the moment. People ask me all the time about the Maggie the Frog prophecy and how she knew that Cersei would have 3 children. Putting aside the continuity error with the 4th child, Cersei chose to have 3 children. This means that some level of her consciousness wants the Maggie the Frog prophecy to come true. Cersei is her own worst enemy. Preston, I'd like to hear your opinion on Tyrion Targaryen. Tyrion Targaryen is one of those theories I don't want to be true, but I do admit there's a lot of evidence supporting it, and there's definitely something strange and unique about Tyrion genetically. But I think it's important to note that A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones clearly show the brutality of feudalism and monarchy. These are systems in which power is given to people based on their birth and not based on their merit. And it took Western society centuries of war to throw off that tyranny. So although it's possible for Tyrion or Jon to be Targaryens, you have to ask yourself, for what purpose would our author be doing this? Do you really think that after everything is said and done, our author would suddenly be okay with feudalism, monarchy, and birthright entitlement? Do you really think our author would support the idea of divine right? It very well may be that Jon and Tyrion are Targaryens, but if they are, they will become villains. Perhaps Tyrion's name sounds like tyrant for a reason. I don't know who will win the Game of Thrones, but I'm pretty sure that monarchy and feudalism will be casualties. Do the Karstarks have a strong claim on ruling the North with Sansa missing and the other Starks presumed dead? The Karstarks have a claim, but likely one claim among many. In the book, our author consistently puts forward the idea that inheritance is messy and ambiguous. If all the Starks and Boltons died, who would get Winterfell? That question is as subjective as who is the true monarch of Westeros. The Karstarks could claim it, the Royces could claim it, the Flints could claim it, even the Freys and the Westerlings could claim it. However, here in the show, the Karstarks don't seem too worried about getting Winterfell. If they were worried about inheriting Winterfell, though, they should be trying to kill the Boltons instead of being aligned with them. It seems Haryon Karstark is being honest in his desire for revenge against House Stark. Wouldn't a smart, calculating character like Roose be less trustworthy of his psychopath son? I do think it's all ridiculous, but if I were going to make an argument for the show, it would be that show Roose is nowhere close as cautious and scheming as book Roose. Roose in the book was keeping his options open for betrayal from the beginning. He married Fat Walda early, he kept his own forces out of the war while killing off the rest of the northern houses, and he turned the brave companions. He was 100% a player. Show Roose does none of this. He is legitimately surprised by Robb's betrayal of the Freys and jumps on the Red Wedding bandwagon fairly late. He also displays a lot of bad judgment. His right-hand man for most of the series is Locke, who is a moron. He also gives up Jaime, an insanely valuable bargaining chip, and then turns around and plans on declaring independence from the Seven Kingdoms. He even marries his son to a woman who is suspected of killing the king. Worst of all, he constantly taunts his son, who is an insane killer. Simply put, show Roose is kind of an idiot, and he's just making things up as he goes along. Hugging Ramsay here is actually completely in character. What's your opinion of Bolt-On? For those that don't know, Bolt-On is a theory that Roose is either sucking energy from people to make himself young, or is body swapping for eternal life. Now, some people think my theories are really crazy. Now, obviously, I don't think my theories are crazy, but even if I did, there would be 2 types of crazy theories that are out there. First, there would be crazy theories with a lot of evidence. For example, the crafter of the High Septon is Howland Reed theory put a lot of work into that. The theory is probably wrong, but I really appreciate the effort, and looking at all the evidence definitely makes one notice new things about the story. However, the other type of crazy theory are just the cool ideas. For example, the original Grand Northern Conspiracy theory had a section about how the Riverlands and the Brotherhood Without Banners would follow Jon. However, it's not based on anything. In fact, the idea would go against the repeated references in the story of the anti-Northern sentiment in the Riverlands. Another example is Euron equals Daario versus Benjen equals Daario. The former is heavily researched and has a lot of evidence, The latter is just a cool idea. And bolt-on is definitely the latter. There's no real support for it. And no one has really put much effort into providing support for it. It's just a cool idea to explain why Roose looks so young and is creepy. Preston, you mentioned in your last Q&A that the show suffers from being tethered to the books. Do you think killing off characters is it trying to go its own way? I think the show is more trying to wrap things up than go its own way. And killing characters off is the easiest and laziest way of doing it. Lots of series start killing characters off near the end because they don't know what else to do with them. Think back to the final episodes of Battlestar or The Sopranos or Breaking Bad. Why would Sansa turn to the Wall and not seek refuge with the Northern Stark loyalists? Well, I'm not sure if Sansa knows which Northern houses like Ramsay and which ones don't. After all, none of them helped her on her wedding day. One of those Northern lords could easily turn her over for a few tracts of land. Jon Snow she knows she can trust 100%. Is Ghost warging Jon? Is Jon warging his own body from Ghost? Do the others warg Whites? This is a great question and a really tough one to answer. So George R.R. Martin has a few previous stories involving animated dead bodies. In his Corpse Handler trilogy, dead bodies are telepathically controlled, but computer implants provide all of the bodily life functions. In a story called Night Flyers, dead bodies are both telepathically and telekinetically controlled, though not for very long. So what's going on with the Whites, Jon, and Beric Dondarrion? Well, I have to say the weirdest thing about the Whites, Beric, and Jon is that they don't rot. Now yes, zombies in movies often don't rot, but our author is actually quite focused on this rotting thing. Sam Tarley makes a special note about the Whites not rotting in both the book and the show. And in the book, Alliser Thorne brings a white hand south, and it ends up rotting. So whatever is animating these bodies is also preserving them. Now rotting mainly occurs because of a lack of oxidation, so perhaps if a power were telekinetically closing wounds and forcing oxygen into these bodies' cells, the bodies could be preserved and animated. This is a roundabout way of saying that whatever is animating these dead bodies is more powerful than just telepathy. It involves powerful telekinesis as well. That goes well beyond the powers of Jon and Ghost, but it's a power that the others, and whoever is animating Beric, Jon, Lady Stoneheart, and Cold Hands, clearly possess. Now I know many of you may say, isn't it just magic? But that's kind of a defeatist attitude. Our author has clearly been thinking about a scientific, or at least a science fiction way of thinking about these things for decades. Our author likely has a logic to it all. Does the resurrection of Jon accomplish anything? I mean, the fans think he can just rise up and rally everyone, beat back the others, and defeat the evil bad guys. But sincerely, does he have that kind of motivation? Well, I think what Jon's resurrection will accomplish is having a bunch of warmongering people rally around him and become religious zealots. I actually think Jon's resurrection is a frickin' disaster. Keep in mind, George R.R. Martin borrows a lot of his style from another science fiction writer called Glenn Cook. Cook once wrote, "More evil gets done in the name of righteousness than in any other way." This is somewhat similar to the George R.R. Martin quote, "There is no creature on earth half as terrifying as a truly just man." Jon rising from the dead to become some sort of messiah is exactly that. He is a truly righteous and truly just man who will lead a bloody crusade against the others. And it's an absolute catastrophe. Whatever is animating him must not have much love for humanity. Do you reckon Jon will be resurrected in the same way in the books? How does this tie in with him being Azor Ahai? Well, as I keep saying, I think all prophecy is bullshit. And I think our author has a pretty poor opinion of organized religion. And I think our author has an extremely poor opinion of war. So I don't think Jon is Azor Ahai because there is no Azor Ahai. Though I believe lots of delusional people will think Jon is Azor Ahai and start war because of it. I also think it's important to separate Jon from Jon's body. In the book, Cat is a very different person from Lady Stoneheart. We have every reason to think that resurrected Jon will not be like Jon at all. The real Jon is probably inside Ghost. And that's all for this Q&A. A lot of what I've talked about here with regard to the Children of the Forest and the others and the bigger picture of the story, I've covered in a series I did called The Minds of Wolves and Robins. So check that out if you'd like, and I'll see you guys in a few days for episode 3. Thanks for watching.